Hi, welcome back to another Toothpickings webcast. I'm Brian. I used to blog as Toothpickings, and then the whole world got the flu, and I discovered a camera, and I've been hiding in my basement, and here we are. We're all up to date. Welcome. You know, 7 years ago, when I first started this vampire journey that I'm on, the thing that really interested me wasn't watching vampire movies or reading vampire books, much to the chagrin of anyone who's ever engaged me in conversation when they find out that I have not read as many books as they have or watched as many movies as they have, and I can't fanboy out with them. What's really interested me, aside from the question of why Western culture in particular continues to be fascinated with the vampire, is those moments of confluence between the folklore and the history and the fiction of vampires, where those things all meet. I find those crossroads really interesting, not only because you have to bury a vampire at the crossroads, but just because anytime you can find that intersection, something magical seems to happen. And it doesn't matter if the intersection is intentional or not. In fact, I think it's cooler if it's unintentional. And that's what I want to talk about today. See, a few weeks ago, I had a really good interview with folklorist Michael Bell. Really smart guy. Wrote this book, Food for the Dead, and he's got another one coming out. Maybe it's already out by the time you watch this. And Michael Bell told me a story that it was really a softball opportunity for me to really take advantage and really dig my fangs into this idea of history and folklore and fiction all meeting, and I completely dropped the bat. I let that one go. I was so enamored with listening to everything Michael Bell had to say. I totally let the opportunity fly by. I want to make good on that right now. If you will indulge me for just a minute or two, I will engage in a little bit of what we would call speculative nonfiction, if you will. Second thing second, though, because while we're talking about Michael Bell, we can't forget that there was also 2010's Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter by Seth Grahame-Smith, best-selling book, and for a good reason. This book is a wild piece of crack fic. It's very readable. It takes horror, it takes gothic, it takes history, it's action, it is vampires. You will page turn this thing like crazy. It's a great book. It's a great read. I highly recommend it. There was a movie adaptation, and the movie adaptation also exists. This book is obviously pure fiction. I don't feel like I should have to say that, but don't ever overestimate the internet, I guess. Put a pin in the idea of Abraham Lincoln killing off the last of the American vampires for just a moment, because we're going to circle back to that in scant sentences, I promise. It won't take a moment. Because during my talk with Michael Bell, we concentrated on one of his areas of expertise, which is the New England vampire panic of the 1700s and 1800s, which was concentrated around Connecticut and Rhode Island. Now, the hallmark of that endemic was people digging up graves and doing everything from just desecrating the bodies to burning them to eating the organs. That New England vampire panic, the American endemic, that ended in the late 1800s, and there's a few different things that can be ascribed to ending that, chief among them isolating the tuberculosis gene. But Michael Bell came up with something that I had not heard before, a contributing factor that had not been taken into account, at least not by me. And that's where we come back to Abraham Lincoln. Upon the death of America's #1 logjammer, his body was set to tour the country, going from city to city so a grieving nation could view the 16th president's corpse. Well, that was only possible with something that was kind of novel at the time, which was the embalming process. This was pretty new. And it started to catch on after Lincoln's body popularized it. Well, guess what can't happen if you're embalmed? You can't rise from the grave. Even the most superstitious among us knows that a corpse cannot get up out of the coffin if it is embalmed. Well, what happens now? As embalming starts to catch on in the late 1800s, the few people who still believe that a revenant can rise from the grave dwindles down to basically zero. And it just so happens to track with the end of the American vampire panic. So what do we do with this? In fiction, Seth Grahame-Smith suggested that a living Abraham Lincoln vanquished the last of the American vampires. Michael Bell is telling us that in reality, the actual historical Abraham Lincoln vanquished the last of the folklore vampires. This is the stuff I love when it comes to talking about vampires. History, folklore, and fiction all coming together. This is what I live for, people. Pickens webcasts, at least the regular weekly thing that I've been doing, that is slowly coming to a close. I think there's going to be one more of these before the regularly scheduled weekly Tooth Pickings releases are going to end. Stick around for that last one. It's an interview I've been chasing for a long time. I think you're going to like it. I want to tell you who it is. It's a good one. Come back. Join me for the last of these toothpicking webcasts, and I hope you're having a good summer. Stay safe. Cover your cough. Wash your hands. Stay safe from the pandemic so we aren't reading about you the way Michael Bell studies the people who had to live through a different kind of endemic many years ago.